everyone, Don here with the next update on my 83 Mustang project car. If you remember, if you watched last week's video, I was in the middle of painting a new cover for my Ford Fusion. As you can see, I got it all done on the car. That's a base coat clear coat. This was a used cover I picked up at a local salvage yard. You can see the paint came out super on this. Very clean. Hardly anything in it as far as dust is concerned. A little dirty right now from driving, but I was able to get this all assembled on Monday. I took those basil trims and I cleaned them up real good and hit them with a matte black finish, because these are molded plastic, fiber filled, and you were starting to see the fibers glistening in it from the wear on them. So I just cleaned them up, shot them with some flat black. So that's what I did last week and had put it together Monday. This is the reason why I had to change it. This is the old one. I'd caught something and it ripped all the way down through here, tore that open, and this big old flap here, and then over the years of Ubering, thing won't stay where you put it. You know, you just tear the stuff up. All the low driveways out in Erie, so gotta dispose of that thing. All right, let's get inside. It's only got to be about 30 degrees out there right now. All right. So what I've been up to this week is I started tearing apart. Well, I've had this Holley 650 double pumper carburetor that I'm going to use with the blow-through setup. Now that I've got my Aqua Blast cabinet up and running good, I took all these pieces and completely stripped them of their chromate finish, cleaned them up so they literally look brand new again. There's the I ended up buying a new shaft because the old one was pretty rusted and pitted, and taking it apart it wasn't a pretty sight. So this one here, I'm going to zinc plate the end of it, and then the rest of it's going to get a black finish like this. I use a gun bluing material, and it gives you that beautiful black finish. I got a couple springs in here that I did. You can see they're black. I had put all these parts, I had stuck in all the metal parts, all the bolts, screws. I put it in muriatic acid to strip off the old finish, which takes off this zinc chromate, yellow chromate finish, and clears off any zinc that's on the parts. So then afterwards I will re-zinc plate all the bolts and screws and then recolor them again with the yellow. The body, this is zinc already, but it won't take color, I'm pretty sure. So I may have to do a light coating on that, but this carburetor is getting a lot of modifications done to it for this blow through. The biggest thing is this choke horn's coming off, and it's going to be taken down, and it's going to be all ported, or not, well, basically machined. I'll cut it off, but I'll get in here with a die grinder and I'll blend this into the bowls here and here. All these square edges will be blended in nicely with the Dremel die grinder and such. Same way on this. I'm going to end up replacing all these boosters. I'm going to take these out and go to down leg boosters back here, and then the front ones, because this is going to be a street car, I'm going to put in annular discharge boosters. They're bigger in diameter, and they're a two-piece. They have an insert in there that when the fuel comes through this passageway, they come in, there's 10 or 12 holes in there for the fuel to come out. On this style here, you can see they just have one solid hole in the bottom, just that bar, and the fuel just comes out right through the end. Camera's getting in the way of its own shadow. But the fuel just comes out the center of these things and just comes in, catches the airstream, and atomizes. But the annular boosters give you a much finer atomization of fuel. And then I also went through and be modifying this. This was a primary side idle adjusting screw only. So only the primary side had idle screws, idle mixture controls. So I ended up drilling these holes through, and then I tapped them for the same screws. And then the holes that come into the body here, I had to drill out the holes through there, and then the whole passage is through here for the idle circuit. And then on this here, this is the original idle circuit that would feed back to the rear things. So you have to kind of drill and put a pin in here or some epoxy and close this groove off on both sides. So you have 4-corner idle, separate idles. So I'm going to do that. You can see the bowls, how nice and clean those bowls came out in that blast cabinet. I didn't polish these, that's just the way they come out of the cabinet. And then another little thing I'm going to do that most of you probably never ever heard of before is I'm going to turn this into a continuous flow fuel system, meaning the fuel pump is going to just be pumping fuel into these bowls with no float. It's going to look just like this. Actually, it'll look more like this one. Come on, stay in focus for me. I've got the old needle and seat assembly here coming in, but what I ended up doing is I cut the bottom of it, put it in the lathe, and I turned it down so I can get the needle assembly out of them, and then I blasted them up into my cabinet. But what I also did that you may or may not be able to see is inside there, this hole was 110 thousandths originally, which was that size. It's hard to tell, but what I did is I drilled it out for a 1032 screw, and what I did is I have a brass set screw screwed down into this thing in both of them, and then it's drilled out to 40 thousandths thick, 40 thousandths orifice size. And what will happen is the fuel pump will pump the fuel in on the normal side, right through there, right into the stock jet, the needle and seat that is. The fuel will come in through this window here. Fuel comes in through here, and this O-ring seals it up into the top of here, and then the fuel has to pass through that orifice I put in there. It's a restrictor, and then that fuel will squirt straight down in. And then on this side, some of these carburetors, the newer ones, they have these things drilled and fitted so you can put the fuel fitting on either side and then put a cap or a plug on if you don't want to use that. But this side is blank. There's no holes drilled through into the cavity here for the main feed. So then what you need to do is, the fuel level is at this point here. So if you follow that across over to here, I'll be drilling a hole in this part, this boss here, so that the bottom of the hole lines up with the bottom of this hole. So that'll maintain your fuel level. So what will happen now is the fuel will come in through here like it normally does, come down through this modified assembly. There's no needle, there will be no needle in that, and there's just a restrictor jet in there, and the fuel will come in and it'll fill up till it gets to the bottom of the hole over here, and then it's going to drain back out this side. And what I'm going to do is buy some of those plugs. They make aluminum anodized plugs, and I'll drill it for 1/8 or 1/4 inch pipe thread, and I'll put a fitting on there and hook probably a -4 line to that. And I'll do the same thing to the back bowl. This is the back bowl. Same thing, drill a hole in there. These jets are already ready. And then you still use your original nuts and set screw in here to lock it down. So there's no float adjustment, no float in there whatsoever. That's all you're going to see inside this bowl, except there'll be a hole here and there'll be a hole here. So the fuel gets pumped in, and it'll be running about 9 psi through a regulator, and it'll come out here, and then it'll go into a small electric pump, which will help send it back to the tank. The regulator is going to be a bypass regulator, because I'm going to use a stock in-tank fuel pump, just a stock Mustang 88 liter I believe, because I'm only going to be running 9 psi on that system. That should flow more than enough. This 40 thousandths jet I'm putting in here will give me enough fuel flow without the fuel level dropping for about 600 horse. And if I need more, or if it's too much, I just pull that set screw out and drill a new one, put it back in. And you really don't even have to take it out. You can just take that screw out of the top, so let's screw the screw out of there, change it out, and you're back in business. So it'll be tuned in once the car's running. So that's the major changes. And then And then I mentioned last week that I got this all done, so you can see that's all nice and pretty now. Like I said, I re-zinc plated this wheel here, re-zinc plated that steel plate inside, and then the springs and everything are in under there, and then I got my new unit here for this. So the next modification is going to be this vacuum advance. It's going to be a vacuum slash boost retard. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. So the next phase will be getting this cut off, and then also all these bleeders are all going to get drilled out, and they're going to get drilled and tapped for set screws just like I did with this. And then I'll make my own air bleeds, and they'll be changeable. So a lot of modifications. And then also there's some cleaning up in these parts. There's some casting boogers in there that need to be coming out. So I'll polish this all up, and once this bench is up and running, I'll reflow this carburetor, but I guarantee you it's going to flow closer to 700 CFM than 6. So that's where I'm at with this. So, but all these, even this is going to be modified. These holes here, which is your air bleed correctors for the different air-fuel ratios as the engine's revving. I will be drilling these out and doing the same thing, putting set screws in there, brass set screws, and drill those orifices out. So it'll be 2 in here, 2 in here. The idle channel restrictors in here will come out, and I'll do the same thing. I'll make those adjustable. And then the power valve restrictor channels right there, that little tiny pinhole, those are going to be drilled out and set screwed so I can adjust those. This is what you use to adjust your cruise when you're on the primary side of the carburetor cruising around. The front jets, you do not jet these at wide open throttle. You jet these for fuel economy and cruise. And then when you step on the power and this power valve opens, then these channels, these restrictor channels, these are the ones that control wide open throttle fuel. So if you need more fuel at wide open throttle, you increase these hole sizes. You don't increase the jets. The backside secondaries, yes, once the secondaries are open, this is all you have for adjustment. But even this one here will be the same way. These holes will be drilled and filled with set screws. There's no power valve channels in here, but the idle restrictor channels, those will be drilled out and done. So everything's going to be adjustable on these. And I just got to get me 2 new screws for here, and that mod is finished. So then the next thing I did, I mentioned before that moving too fast for the camera, I wanted to start working on the actual car. So today come on, focus. So I put this on here, cleaned it up. It's already been primed up with the that green etching primer that I like to use. It looks like a zinc chromate. That's this stuff here, this green. It was already primed in that, so I got my 1K gray primer out and reshot the whole thing in gray. And then this is a gloss black. It's an acrylic enamel with hardener for a top coat. So I sprayed this a couple hours ago, little fingerprint. But this will all be up under the roof right here. You won't see any of that. It goes up under here. The only thing you're going to see when this is on the car is this here where the T-top frame is. There'll be rubber seals, of course, coming all the way around here. And then there's a center strip on here that'll be powder coated matte black. But when you take the T-tops out, you'll see this stuff here. So that's the way it originally was a shiny black. So that's, again, acrylic enamel. So once that's nice and cured, I'm ready to stuff that in here. This already has the reinforcement in here. This piece inside here is the reinforcement. This gets all pop riveted in through these holes here, 1/4 inch pop rivets. And then in the back side, it comes all the way back into here and gets pop riveted into all these holes that I have all pre-drilled for. So this is all ready for that. So once that's in there, then I'll probably get to work on cleaning this out. Like I said, this was sitting outside while it was raining and got a little dirty, but I got to clean that up and put my last gallon of sound deadener on that. And then I got to dig around, find some more of these brackets I think are in a box underneath that bench back there. So I want to get those in there. And then it's just a matter of starting to put things back in here. Still debating if I'm going to use the bed liner in here, the gray like it's on the bottom, and put a coat on top of the black, just so it's not black. You'll never see any of it anyway, because it's I may just put this on there. Again, that is the Raptor bed liner material with just a gray color added to it to make it look like primer. And then once I start doing the actual painting of the car, the silver, as you can see here, overspray, anything overspray in here will be fine, because that's the way the stock ones are. This will be sprayed silver. There's a lot of bracketry that goes in here, so that's kind of where I'm at, folks. But I wanted to get this done today. It was about 45 degrees today, but with my heater in here, I can maintain the heat pretty well. I got it turned off now so it won't kick on. And this has been working flawlessly. It's absolutely a wonder. Now I'm at the point where I need to change the water out, because the water's getting kind of dingy, brown looking from probably just some of the rusty parts that I do. But I pretty much don't put anything in here like that's really bad and rusty, because it just contaminates it too soon. But once that settles real good, I can get in there and hopefully siphon the water out of it without sucking up any of the fine glass bead, and then I can just throw some fresh water in. But I do have enough glass media to change that 3 more times before I got to order it. And again, you know, that stuff's like $40 to $50 a bag to have it shipped to your house, and there's nobody locally that does this stuff. The rear end, I did end up redrawing the pattern to make adjustments to it. Overall, it was pretty close. The problem was I had these bolts in backwards, and they wanted to hit my inner bracket that the caliper attached to, but this is the actual way they're supposed to go in, and it's going to clear. The thickness of this, if that's under a 1/2 inch, it should be fine, which I still got to measure. And I did check, these are stock 308 gears, and that flange is bent. I put dial indicator on it, it is bent by like 10 thousandths. I'll check the other one, but I do have another pair and another rear end. In worst case scenario, if both of them are no good and the other 2 I got are no good, I'll just buy some fresh ones, buy some new ones. Alright folks, I think I'm just going to cut her off there. Give you a heads up, one more little thing did. To clean all the screws, I use these things. I take 2 of these, put all the hardware from this in here, all the metal pieces, after they've been stripped of their finish. They still have, they're still a little grungy or so, maybe a little rusty. I put them in here, and I take 2 of them, and I just take some safety wire and I tie this together real tight with safety wire, and then I just take it in the blast cabinet, and you can just literally hit the blaster right through it, and it just sits there and mixes it up like popcorn, and they come out clean as a whistle. So that's really, and these were cheap. I bought them I think at Walmart, probably a couple bucks a piece. So lots to do. This I'm just doing because I just finished reading David Vizard's book, and a lot of these mods, you know, removing all this and stuff was going to be in the works, but I do like this free-flowing idea with the jet. So there's no floats in there. You'll never have to touch the float level again. You just need the little electric pump it back, and then it'll go in with the regulator, the bypass regulator, and go back to the tank. So that should work really well. I'm going to go ahead and set up, get out a fuel pump. I do have a spare electric fuel pump. I'll hook this all up to the fuel line fittings, and then I'll do a flow test on that and see how long it takes to flow. I don't know, maybe you're talking, this thing's supposed to flow, I need like 34 gallons per hour, and then you can break that down into gallons per minute or break it into pounds per minute. So, and then I'll verify how well that is, but I think I'll be pretty close. And making my own jets, I can put it anywhere I want. The car will tell me what it wants in the future, but the main goal is to get this thing at about 600 horse on pump gas. Oh, and I also did finally found me a set of dome pistons, because I'm going to crank this compression up to minimum 10.5 to 1, maybe 11.5. I just found some SRP pistons, I believe they are, that had an 18cc dome, and that 18cc dome, I haven't calculated yet, but a 6.8cc dome would give me 10.5 without looking at any crevice losses, you know, from the between the piston and the cylinder wall and above the top ring, you know, you've got maybe a cc of airspace in there. Head gaskets figured into a chamber, but when you get in, really dig into it, you can lose compression really fast. So with these 18 cc dome pistons, and they're just stock, they'd be 30 over probably. I measured this bore before and it was stock, and it's pretty clean cylinders. So with those pistons at 18 cc's, I'm probably going to be at least 11 and a half, maybe higher, and I can adjust that by trimming the piston tops down or valve reliefing it. But the goal is to be at least 11 to 1. Even though it's going to be twin turboed, that's where the cam comes in. You're going to run a very narrow lobe separation, probably something around 106, 107 degree lobe separation. What that does is when you do a compression figure on your motor, you're always figuring static compression tests with the swept volume of the piston, cylinder head gasket, all that. You end up with your 10.5 to 1 compression. That's static. Dynamic compression is when the engine's actually cranking over and you take a compression tester and you read it. The difference between 170 and 200 psi is the camshaft. You want to keep the cranking compression down under 200, maybe 175, 180, 185 max. That's why if you ever look at these really narrow lobe separation cams that are 106, 108, you always associate that with a race cam, a high-end race cam. Well, the problem with those is they have so much overlap that you lose compression because both the intake and exhaust valves are open at the same time, and your air kind of comes in, goes out, and you don't get a lot of compression before the intake valve is fully closed and the exhaust is fully closed before compression builds, and that's where you'll end up seeing maybe as low as 170 psi. So that's the reason why, if you ever look at those cams, they call for 10.5, 11, 11.5, 12.5 to 1 compression, is because of the camshaft, the overlap on the cam. It loses dynamic compression, and that's why you got to have such a high compression. So, but by doing that with a narrow band, narrow lobe separation angle, you can run 11.5 to 1 compression and still run boost on it and still have pump gas. So you just got to know what parts to put together and figure that all out. So that's why all these new cars, these Coyotes, are running, you know, stock motors, 11.5 to 1 compression, is because of the lobe separation angle of the camshafts. And that's why they can run the turbos and nitrous and all that on and still run 11, 12 to 1 compression, because the dynamic compression ratio is not that high. It's a lot lower. But because of the narrow lobe separation angle of the camshaft, that still gives you that very high-end output power. But with the extra compression, it also helps you on the low-end mid-range, so you don't lose any low-end torque. So you kind of get the best of both worlds out of it. So, all right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and cut her off there and get this thing loaded up for you tonight. And it's going to be 40s, 50s, 60s by Wednesday here, so I'll be out here working on this. I'll get this hopefully put in tomorrow or day after, and so when you see it next week, that'll be in the car, and maybe I'll be working on that, maybe I'll be working on that, maybe I'll be working on that. I don't know, whatever I feel like it. So, okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and end this video now, and as always, appreciate everyone taking their time to watch these videos. Feel free to leave any comments, questions, concerns, and I'll answer them as they come along. And if it all goes well, I'll see you guys again next weekend. So for now, this is Dino Don out.